In the 90s, Malibu Comics introduced readers to the heroes and villains of the Ultraverse. This universe and its characters would be left mostly unused after folding into Marvel, but there is one villain the Ultraverse offered that should not be left to collect dust. A modern-day hunter who has style, the smile, and leaves bodies in piles. His name is Rafferty, who I can't wait to tell you more about on this episode of Lesser Evils. Rafferty first appeared in Firearm issue 12 from 1994, but was mentioned as far back as Firearm issue 6, where the readers of the book were sufficiently warned that Rafferty is coming. Rafferty was born 40 years ago to a poor family in Georgia. While in his teens, Rafferty murdered his own parents before framing a neighbor for the act. He inherits all of his parents' things and sells them to support a lifestyle of partying for years. The fun came to an end when Rafferty crosses the wrong member of a crime family. To find an escape, Rafferty joins the army, where he rises to the challenge of this new path. He works to become the perfect soldier and soars through the ranks. Rafferty's innate skill at killing saw him placed in the Special Forces Unit Tango. The unit would go on to have a distinguished and bloody record, during which Rafferty would develop a distaste for guns, believing his killing was an art that needed specialized tools. Rafferty's life changed again when Unit Tango confronted their first Ultra-human. Unit Tango is wiped out except for Rafferty, who kills the Ultra and takes pieces of the man's body as trophies. During the 6 months it took Rafferty to recover, he came to believe his destiny was to kill all the Ultras in the world. After quitting the army, Rafferty initially funded his new mission by killing some higher-up drug dealers. 2 years later, Rafferty murders his first Ultra target, a rookie superhero named Sigma. Rafferty's work becomes much more efficient after meeting the disgustingly wealthy but mentally unstable Ultra named Edwin Mosley. Mosley wants Rafferty to kill every other Ultra besides himself. Rafferty readily agrees, full on planning to kill Mosley at a later date. He provides Rafferty with financing and Ultra tracking technology that identifies over 300 Ultras across just the United States. Rafferty begins his quest by killing low-level Ultras in order to sharpen his skills. Low-level Ultras like Ben Garrett, a young man with the ability to fly, until Rafferty ends his life with an arrow through the heart. Little Charles Kingsley was an Ultra with aquatic powers whose promising life is cut short by Rafferty's razor-sharp harpoon fired from below. Elvis Colby was a rookie superhero on the rise who called himself Lash, at least until Rafferty tracked him down and cut his career short. Rafferty sought to diversify his killing methods while still not using any guns. In order to take down the superhumanly tough Ultra named Lucas, Rafferty sneaks an explosive into his meal and blows him up from the inside. He poisons the cigarette of pyrokinetic pyromaniac Sandra Kay, causing her to lose her powers and immolate herself. The destructive battle between Right Man and the devilish Dr. Z is brought to an end by the explosives set by Rafferty. When Rafferty makes his first attempt at a high-profile Ultra kill, he turns his sights on the superheroine known as Lady Killer, the leader of the Ultra team called the Strangers. While attending a fashion show held in the honor of the Strangers team, Rafferty manages to lie his way into an isolated room with Lady Killer and prepares to cut her throat open, but is interrupted by the arrival of her teammate Spectral. Rafferty warns Spectral that he knows all about his powers, but is still caught off guard by the hero's out-of-the-box thinking. Not giving up yet, Rafferty hurls his knife at Lady Killer, but she deflects the attack with her superhuman reflexes. While escaping through the crowd, Rafferty spies the Stranger's ally known as Auntie, whose powers allow her to talk to animals, and succeeds in killing her before the rest of the team can catch up. Surprising everyone, the Stranger's nemesis, the Pilgrim, arrives and attempts to recruit Rafferty into his gang of supervillains. When the Strangers begin fighting with Pilgrim, Rafferty successfully makes his escape. Rafferty's mission changes a bit when he learns of Alex Swann, a British-born detective with a reputation for disliking Ultras. The father of the Rafferty victim, Ben Garrett, hires Alex Swann to bring his son's killer to justice. The elder Garrett promises to cover all of the detective's expenses to do so. When Alex Swann arrives at his hotel room after the meeting, he finds an unknown cell phone waiting to be answered. When Swann answers the phone, he is greeted by Rafferty's trademark, "Hello, hi, howdy." Excited to speak with Swann, Rafferty introduces himself. Hearing Rafferty's name, Swann is reminded of the precog who had warned him about this man. Rafferty reveals the reason he left the phone was so the two of them could communicate and maybe become friends. As a sign of trust, Rafferty reveals that he killed Ben Garrett and that he is going to kill every Ultra. Rafferty wants Alex Swann to witness his acts, believing they both have a lot in common. Rafferty explains how he and Swann will be playing a game. He will give clues to Swann about his next victim. If Swann is good enough, he will save the victim. Otherwise, Rafferty will kill what he sees as abominations. Rafferty reveals the victim's name, location, and the time he will kill him. He leaves it up to Swann to stop him. Swann takes on the challenge and meets with the potential victim, an ultra-human millionaire named Darren Lynch. Despite having his own security force, Lynch allows Swann to stay nearby as extra protection. While Rafferty waits for the appropriate time to kill his first target, he studies footage of the next target on his list, the 90s-ass ultra-hero known as Warstrike. He plans how to beat Warstrike's ability to briefly glimpse the future and manipulate probability. To get Warstrike's attention, Rafferty begins leaving a trail of ultra corpses like breadcrumbs alongside taunting messages written in their blood. The trail leads to a restrained couple clearly left as bait. The boyfriend is an ultra who thinks he is escaping until he runs headlong into the tip of Rafferty's knife. Rafferty begins taunting the other hostage when Warstrike lands a surprise punch. Rafferty is actually happy to see Warstrike, and the two men immediately begin a destructive fight. Rafferty gains the upper hand against Warstrike and leaves another trail for the hero to follow into the sewers. As Warstrike cautiously enters the sewer system, he discovers Rafferty's mask left floating in the water. Attacking from his hiding place in the pipes above, Rafferty stabs Warstrike in the shoulder and knocks away his gun. For a moment, Warstrike appears to have the advantage, until Rafferty gets a hold of the hero's gun. Despite Warstrike's ultra ability to predict future attacks, he fails to avoid the one that ends his life. Later that evening, a group of Rafferty's mercenaries attack the Lynch compound. After the attackers are successfully fought off or killed, Swann moves to check on the target when Rafferty calls him to chat. Rafferty reveals that the mercenaries were simply a distraction, as he had already poisoned Darren Lynch's food. Swann turns around to discover Lynch's lifeless body on the floor. 1 point for Rafferty. Rafferty reveals to Swann that his next targets are in New York, and that they will die in 2 days. Swann arrives in New York City and begins investigating the local ultras, during which Swann discovers the rotting corpse of one of Rafferty's earliest victims. Swann tries to warn a pair of ultras named Vinaigrette and Organism 0.9b, but they believe they can protect themselves and send Swann away. A seemingly lucky tip from a bartender, in reality a tip planted by Rafferty, leads Swann into the New York sewer systems where he encounters the monstrous ultra known as Sludge being attacked by Rafferty's mercenaries. The pair team up to fight back the small army of goons. Hiding in the shadows, Rafferty takes advantage of the moment and fires an arrow directly into Swann's shoulder. Rafferty leads the pursuing Swann deeper into the sewer tunnels and right into an elaborate explosive setup. Swann is left with a choice: to chase Rafferty and let the bombs kill innocent people, or to stay and disarm the bomb and let Rafferty escape. Choosing the moral option, Swann stays and disarms the bomb. Later, Rafferty calls Swann while the detective is recovering in his hotel room. Rafferty reveals how he planned all of the events that happened in the sewers, and that when Swann successfully disarmed the sewer bomb, it detonated the bomb Rafferty planted inside the home of Vinaigrette in 0.9b, exploding and killing the two ultras, just like Rafferty had said he would, much to Swann's crushing horror. 2 points for Rafferty. Rafferty informs Swann that his next target will be in San Francisco, and that his next kill will be a member of an ultra super team, but not the strangers, as he has already tested them. When Rafferty gives Swann the time and place where he should be to stop him next, Swann attempts to get one over on Rafferty and arrive at the location early, but Rafferty shows that he is a step ahead when he gets the drop on the detective. Rafferty beats the shit out of Swann for not following his rules. Still wanting to play, Rafferty confesses that his next target will be a member of the Freaks, and invites Swann to kill him to stop him if he can, before bludgeoning Swann into unconsciousness. While Swann is unconscious, Rafferty plants a bomb in his gun that Swann only just manages to avoid when he awakens. While Rafferty lets Swann sleep off his concussion, he moves on to his next target, the San Francisco-based ultra hero called Nightman. Already injured after the capture of another ultra supervillain, Nightman is surprised by Rafferty, who slices the hero open before knocking him out, leaving his mercenaries there to finish off the hero. Elsewhere, Rafferty watches from his temporary base as a bloody and bruised Swann meets up with the members of the Freaks super team. Rafferty calls Swann and tells the detective that the next victim won't be a Freaks member, but actually Nightman, who is currently fighting for his life. Just as Rafferty planned, Swann and the Freaks leader leave to save Nightman. This leaves the Freaks team vulnerable to Rafferty's mercenaries. The team holds their own against the soldiers, as their teammate Plug enters the internet to search for Rafferty. The young hero discovers that his teammate Cayman is Rafferty's true target, and that the crossbow-wielding villain is moments away from claiming his victim. When Rafferty fires his weapon at the reptilian Ultra, his teammate Plug dives in the way and takes the arrow instead of his friend. While the Freaks mourn their dead teammate, who marks one more point for Rafferty, Alex Swann and the Freaks leader arrive to rescue Nightman. All parties are surprised to learn that they have been duped by an absent Rafferty, who left a rooftop doppelganger behind to capitalize on the situation. The doppelganger takes aim at the ultra-villain Nightman had restrained, and for the second time this night, friendship leads to someone sacrificing themselves to save the life of their friend. That's a bonus point for Rafferty, who calls Alex Swann to gloat. While the heroes were busy running around playing Rafferty's games, Rafferty was in a dirigible flying over his number one target, the living caricature of a superhero known as Prime. Rafferty uses his bow to put an explosive arrow in Prime's vulnerable ear and takes the head off the seemingly unstoppable Ultra. Fuck, I love comics. Having finished his first wave of killings, Rafferty decides to let things cool down before he begins his next round of victims. That is, until his money man, Edwin Mosley, contacts him, demanding that Rafferty kill one more target who is more dangerous than Prime. Rafferty initially pushes back, declaring that he picks his victims, until he learns the target is a baby girl with miraculous healing abilities. Foregoing his usual meticulous planning, Rafferty attacks the church openly with a small army of soldiers. After murdering everyone who gets in his way, Rafferty finds the baby's crib empty and the priest escaping with the young Ultra. After killing the holy man protecting the baby, Rafferty turns his attention to his innocent victim. Rafferty's plans change when he is alerted to the police barricades outside the church. He turns the situation into a full-on siege, having his men take hostages. Rafferty's snipers fire on cops and onlookers to keep the crowd back. His hostages are rigged with explosives that will go off if any Ultra gets near. When this gets tested, one hero and 5 hostages lose their lives. Rafferty watches all of the events from inside the church. In order to buy time until the means of escape arrives, Rafferty declares the only person he will talk to is Alex Swann. Until then, he will keep the baby as leverage. Just recently married and ready to return back to his wife, Swann wastes no time gunning down Rafferty's men. Rafferty wounds the distracted Swann with his crossbow, in the opposite shoulder he had injured in the sewers of San Francisco. Rafferty leads Swann through the hallways of the church into a trap filled with armed and waiting mercenaries. During the chase, Rafferty notes how much fun he has had with their game. Rafferty leaves the infant girl for Swann to find, but confronts the detective when he attempts to leave with her. The pair open fire on each other, both men ending up wounded. When Rafferty moves in with his signature knife to kill the detective, Alex Swann finally surprises Rafferty with a hidden gun and unloads it into the murderer's stomach. A bleeding Rafferty is impressed with Swann's thinking, but reveals the detonator and sets off the explosives, destroying the entire church. Despite the destruction, Swann manages to walk out of the ruins with the baby safely in hand. Just then, Rafferty reveals that he lives as well and hurls his knife at the baby. Swann blocks the blade with his body before returning fire on Rafferty. Rafferty takes 3 more bullets before falling into the flames, where Swann leaves the murderer to burn. That was in 1995, and Rafferty has never appeared again since. So why do I like Rafferty? To me, Rafferty is a unique kind of villain in his psychology. His hatred for Ultras was not driven by religious zealotry, revenge for his slain teammates, or to cleanse the gene pool, none of that average nonsense. He did it because he was in search of an evil purpose, a challenge that made his murderous life worth living. Looking like a villain from an 80s action film, Rafferty was created to be the perfect foil for Alex Swann. During their rivalry, Rafferty never stopped having the upper hand, and toyed with the detective until the very end, winning their game 6-0. Rafferty is a badass who makes his goals more difficult by primarily using knives and arrows to kill, only using explosives on the toughest targets, and only using guns when they were the closest weapon available. During his run, Rafferty is responsible for at least 29 Ultra-human kills in the 14 issues he appeared in. Find me another Ultraverse villain who has those kind of marks. On top of everything, Rafferty was a professional. He studied his targets and planned out the hits, but even when a few of those plans fell through, he never panicked. Instead, Rafferty adapted and changed targets when new ones presented themselves. Despite the Ultraverse being part of Marvel's vast multiverse, the heroes and villains that make it up show no signs of coming back. But maybe, just maybe, Marvel will look for a new threat and remember what they have. A killer, ready and willing to take those with superpowers down a notch, dropping one superhuman body at a time.